Hello and welcome to this week's press preview alongside Justin Conn. I'm Aren Dow. I guess we're going for the Johnny Cash logo, black on black today. So hopefully you guys can see us. But crazy game between MacArthur and Rochester. Where Rochester and everybody knows how good they've been. The only public school team who's won as many state championships in a row. And MacArthur, gets a huge lead by halftime and ends up holding on for probably the biggest win in. It's been a while since they've had a bigger win than beating Rochester.
Exactly, and I think one of the big things about the win is it was looking like MacArthur was on the downhill stretch right now. It just kind of looked like they had that loss to Jacksonville. They hadn't played real well in a win against Springfield and another win against Lincoln. Hadn't looked real great, and you're thinking, man, and because this has kind of been a thing for MacArthur over some of the past years where they've had good starts and then kind of faded. With their numbers not being great, they faded late in season. So you kind of thought, well, this is one of these deals where they're just not going to get this done against Rochester, and they came out and they got the job done. And I think that not only is that a big win just at any point of the season, but kind of rescued their season a little bit when it looked like they have Southeast coming up this week. It looked like they could be 5-4. Mm-hmm. Now you kind of feel like they're going to be 7-2. So I think that was and could get a home game in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, I think that was not only big for the program, it's big for just in the midst of this season as far as getting a good playoff seed and maybe getting a home game in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the timing of it, coming in week 8, I mean, you have that, emotional win against Glenwood where it isn't overtime, but it is week 1. I mean, there is a little bit of time but to have this game that's so close to the playoffs, I think that's gotta be nice. You have this, just a couple weeks away from going to the playoffs. And that's where we're going to start today. There's 5 4-win teams that are looking to get that 5th win here in the final week. And we'll start with Olney, who has probably the toughest test of any of these teams, playing at Casey-Westfield. And, Olney, they dropped the game last week against Newton. And, you thought out of those 2 games, probably Newton is the team that they would beat in comparison to Casey. But a tough game coming up for Tigers.
No question. They've played Casey okay the past couple of years, haven't got the win. If they do happen to pull the upset, they should be in pretty good shape to get in. At this point, they have 36 opponents' wins. Some people call them playoff points, whatever you want to call them. They have 36 going into this one, and they'll obviously gain a few then with the week 9 games. But it's not in great shape, but it should be enough to get them in if they would happen to pull the upset and beat Casey.
Yeah, and Casey still is playing for a share of the little Illini title. So, I mean, they are still playing for something. Jerseyville is traveling to Mattoon, which is a replay of last year where Jared Pilson had that huge game in week 9 to get that win against Jerseyville. Braden Smith has looked better as the season's gone on. I don't know if he's quite at Jared Pilson level yet, but he has looked very good the last few weeks. And I think, this is the point where you got to put it all together and find that 5th win.
Yeah, and Jerseyville's a little bit of a funny team. They've had some really good wins, and then they've had some losses that you think, well, maybe Mattoon can jump up and get this win. If they do win, they're going to get in the playoffs. They have 40 opponents' wins now, so they're in good shape. But it's going to be a tough one. It's a long trip for Jerseyville, so that kind of plays to Mattoon's favor a little bit too. But that might be one of the more just who knows what's going to happen in this one games of the week.
And as far as a season-long story, I don't think it'd be any better than Mattoon, where you had those first 2 losses. You have a game against Highland that gets forfeited, and it's like, okay, well, they got to win, but it was a forfeit. And then you start to see them really, coming along, and they get that big win against Effingham. So from the start of the season to now, I don't think anyone's had quite as big of an arc as Mattoon has this year.
Yeah, I'd agree.
St. Teresa goes to Warrensburg, who's looking for their 5th win. It's going to be at Warrensburg. And, this is a game where, the Cardinals have played, you look at the top 4 teams, Sullivan, that was kind of a blowout, but Tuscola and Shelbyville, they kept pretty close, especially Tuscola last week, where they were in the game for that first half, and really, almost all the way through the game. And it'll be depending on how St. T, they have some injuries, and we'll kind of see how that all plays out with their roster. But, Warrensburg has a chance to make the playoffs in a long time and get that 5th win.
Right, and one thing about we've noticed in the Central Illinois Conference this year is the teams aren't, there have been blowouts, but I think for the most part the teams are pretty close talent-wise. Even, when you talk about the middle of the pack that Warrensburg has been in most of the year, and then St. T, the talent difference isn't huge, and especially if St. T is not at full strength, that's something Warrensburg can take advantage of. The Cardinals will get into the playoffs if they were to win this game, so they'll have that motivation, kind of knowing that if they win, they will be in.
And then we have Pana at Hillsboro, which is a rematch from last year as well. And where it was, both teams were 4-4, both were looking to get into the playoffs. And this is, for South Central. I mean, they have a close conference, so if they get the 5 wins, I mean, they're likely getting in as well. But you got to think the Panthers are looking for a repeat from last year's game.
And actually, it's the 3rd year in a row they've played Hillsboro in Week 9 with the playoffs on the line. The year before, in 2012, Hillsboro had a bad record going in, and it almost and they almost upset Pana in that game. And then last year, Pana put it on them pretty good. I think it was 44-0. Pana, they have 36 opponents wins now, which is close. But like you said, being in a close conference, you're guaranteed to at least get. They should be good if they win this game. And I think Pana. Well, it's close though. You start looking at comparing scores, and man, it's hairy.
Right. I mean, we talked about the CIC being close. South Central has been as close as anybody, as any conference. I mean, they have a lot of teams where they're getting 2-3 point wins. Look at Vandalia. They had that stretch, and Payne's had a couple really close games as well. So we'll see if they can get that 5th win to make it into the playoffs. And the last one I think is probably the best bet for a 4-win team. Newton gets a home game against Paris, and Newton, they have a really good rushing attack with Mitch Bierman, Brock Moser at quarterback, and Moser's played pretty well throwing the ball as well. I think that's probably the like I said, probably the easiest out of these 5 as far as any of these teams go. And as after they get in that win against Olney, try to get one more to make it into the playoffs.
And they have right now the exact same amount of opponents wins as Pana at 36. Little Illini went back to being a closed conference this year, so I think if they win, it'll be they might not sleep great on Friday night if they win, but they should get in. If then they should beat Paris.
Yeah, and if they do win, it'll be the first time since 2007 that Newton's made the playoffs. So it's a long time coming for Newton.
We also have several 5-win teams that you kind of want to win that 6th game and kind of put it away. We have 2 teams in particular in Sangamon Valley and also in Nokomis, who, if they don't win, they're not going to make the playoffs. Sangamon Valley is 4-4, but they play 1-7 Martinsville. That should be a game that they handle pretty easily, so they'll get in. But if they would happen to lose that game, they're not going to get in. Nokomis is in the same boat. They play East Alton Wood River, which should be a pretty easy win for them as well. A couple other teams, Vandalia, who we talked about, they play Greenville, which is probably going to be a loss. They're at 35 opponent wins going into this one. So, that one's – and they're kind of in a tough spot. And as well, Cumberland plays Arthur. They have 35 going into that game. That's not going to be an easy – that should be a pretty good game, though.
Yeah.
I like that matchup. Cumberland's been much better than I think we thought going into this season.
Oh, easily, yeah. Monty Wolke's done a really good job down in Cumberland, and they kind of all feed off him. And playing a team in Arthur, which is kind of the same matchup. Tyler Schuring, and Wolke both kind of dual threats, where maybe run the ball a little bit more than they pass. But it should be a good game between those two.
So with those two, Vandalia and Cumberland, that's tough. They might lose those games. They're going to be. That's going to be close. They're going to be close as far as that cutoff goes. 3 other teams, Monticello, Mount Zion, Maroa. I think those 3 teams will win their final games. Monticello has Monmouth Roseville, which is 3-5. Mount Zion has Bethalto Civic Memorial, which I think that one's a little scarier. Bethalto's 3-5, but they've beaten Jerseyville and Mattoon.
Right.
So that one's a little scary. But I think Mount Zion with 38 going into this week, 38 opponents wins should be okay. And Maroa plays Cerro Gordo Bement. I think most of us think that's a game that Maroa should win. They would be the one, if they would happen to get upset in that game, they could be in a little bit of trouble with 35. Though with their schedule, they have some teams. It was kind of boom and bust with them. They had Tolono and St. Joe Ogden and Monticello and St. T on their schedule, but they also had Meridian and Rantoul and Hayworth. So yeah, that kind of, I think they would be okay, and I think they'll win it, so it won't matter anyway. So, but I think this year might be this is probably the most, I guess, drama going into this final week that I can remember in recent years. And I know that we've talked in the office. Our sports editor Mike Albright said we have 20 potential playoff teams, which would be more than quite a bit than we've had in past years. And I think it's
we had
just
17 last year, right?
And I think that just kind of speaks to the fact that there's just been a lot more parity this year than there has been in past years.
Yeah, I mean, this season's been a lot of fun to cover because it has been so unpredictable to where, I mean, you go into a game and you think, okay, this will be go a certain way. And I think, and it's not even just one conference. We have multiple conferences where it's just been a lot of fun to see, how things have played out. And it has been, if one team is really playing well, it's just kind of gone their way. I think, playoff points, the opponent's wins, I think that'll be somewhat of a factor. I think, and we kind of look at this every single year, especially with Maroa. Are they going to end up in 2A or 1A? And they're right on the cusp right now. They're at 312 is their enrollment. And Tuscola, which is just above at 315, those are two teams that are really close to the 1A, 2A border. A pair of Apollo teams in Effingham and Taylorville are going to be really close between 4A and 5A. I would think that those guys are going to get into the playoffs in 4A. I probably wouldn't say 5A, but it is close. And, if there are some upsets in those lower classes, then they get bumped up. The other thing, and not in our area, but Sacred Heart Griffin is really close to 5A and 6A. And I think, for like MacArthur and some other 5A schools, that's really the team to watch to see if they get bumped up to 6A. That really clears the way a lot more than it would if they were in there for the southern half of 5A. So we'll see if SHG goes up to 6A or they get bumped down to 5A. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch.
I will have a story in Friday's paper, and there'll be some stuff online as well that kind of is a companion to it, where I will have a breakdown of all of I guess, my projections for the 256 that make the playoffs, and also in what classes each team will be in. I haven't quite got to that yet. I got down to, I have the field of 256, but I don't have it split into the classes yet. So, but we'll have that in Friday's paper, and also have some predictions of what we think maybe the first round matchups could possibly be. So definitely look for that, and look for, of course, coverage from Friday night. We still have a couple weeks of Pick'em yet to go, so make sure you get on that as well. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll see you at the games.